We hear a lot about AI changing healthcare, but what does that actually mean when you're waiting for your scan, diagnosis is delayed, or specialists are under undue pressure all the time? In this first interview on Tech Brew with Vandana Nair, we look at how AI is transforming the scenes of radiology. Not to replace the doctors, of course, but to assist them. From reading millions of scans to improving accessibility in places where specialists are not always available. The company behind this work already partners with some of the top hospital chains in the country and touches upon thousands of patients' lives without them knowing. This is an interview with Kalyan Sivasailam, co-founder of 5C Network. I hope you enjoyed this very insightful conversation. So, good morning, Kalyan. Thank you so much for taking the time. And you are the esteemed first guest on my interview section in my channel. So, Kalyan, thank you once again. So Kalyan, like we spoke just a few minutes before this, on how I want our discussion to be more focused on accessibility for people. So, kind of understanding your work from their lens. So, before all that, before we get into what you do, I want to first understand from you, how did you get into this particular sector, healthcare sector? Was it some incident, some personal incident, or this was something that you always wanted to pursue? Yeah.
First of all, Vandana, thank you for having me as your first guest. It is a pleasure. It's an honor. And I think you're starting on a very auspicious day as well. 14th January is considered a very auspicious day to start. And
Yeah.
wishing you all the best for magnificent
Thank you.
success.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for having me again. Healthcare is, my journey to healthcare has been very interesting. I do not come from a family of doctors, or it's not like some family friends were doctors and I was inspired. I'm a computer science engineer from NIT Surathkal. I have a post graduation in law, and I like my journey to healthcare started almost two kind of things combined to make me really get into this space. One was that I was spending a lot of time on Kaggle doing competitive machine learning and like kind of understanding what all is happening in the space. And a lot of the bigger challenges and the challenges that most people are attracted to were challenges where they would give us a small number of radiology images and ask us to build a model on that. And so that got me interested in medical imaging as a concept. At the same time, two other things happened. Of course, at that time, the big talking heads on TV, right? Jeff Hinton, Vinod Khosla, when convolutional neural networks, when deep learning took its next step, a lot of people have come and said, you know what, image recognition will be a solved problem and radiologists will be out of a job. It was a big thing then. And that got me interested in the space because there was so much hype around it. And finally, while I was kind of doing all this, my then friend, now co-founder Syed, was admitted into a hospital. He had an MRI of his brain and spine that took over 2 days to get reported. And so it just kind of all, we realized that this is a technologically interesting problem. And it is a real problem because one of us have faced it. And so when I told Syed that, hey, we should definitely do something in radiology, Syed, who also has no background in radiology, said, "Man, I'm in. Let's get started." And so that's basically the my journey into healthcare, and it has been extremely challenging, extremely rewarding, and continues to be extremely exciting.
Okay, that sounds very interesting. So now I want to get into the 5C network, your startup that you have. Uh, so for someone who's watching this who doesn't have, say, a tech or a medical background, can you explain the process from, say, when a person takes a scan to receiving the scan reports? So where does 5C come in? What do you guys do? And how does this help the consumers?
Perfect. Shameless plug. 5C is today, I would say, one of the preeminent health tech AI startups in the country today. We work in the radiology space. So radiology is, many people would have seen it, but just to be comprehensive in my explanation, it is a branch of diagnosis that deals primarily with non-invasive techniques to actually look inside your body. So X-rays, CTs, MRIs, ultrasounds. These are the things that kind of fall under radiology. And radiology has been one of the most fundamental things that have changed the way medicine is practiced. To give everybody context, radiology has two Nobel Prizes, right? The first Nobel Prize in physics, the first ever Nobel Prize in physics, was given to Wilhelm Röntgen for his discovery of the X-ray. Um, And the MRI won the Nobel Prize in 1971 as well. And so it's been like radiology has been fundamental to healthcare's transformation into an evidence-based practice. And what the big problem is that radiology needs high quality expertise to get, so the image comes in and it needs to be interpreted by a radiologist. And the problem is that radiology has been exploding in terms of demand and has also been exploding in terms of complexity. So, radiologists who are specialized doctors who read radiology scans today have to deal with more number of cases, and those cases are also much, much more complex. And so it's a double whammy for these specialists. And capacity all over the world is breaking. India has maybe 15,000 radiologists for, of course, the scale of our population. The US has close to 50,000, but the number of images that they do is exponentially larger than India. So this is a worldwide problem. And 5C exists to increase the capacity of our medical experts, specifically in this case, radiologists, using artificial intelligence, using digital technologies. We impact today over 10,000 patients every day across India. They just don't know it. And the way it works is that these patients now would walk into a hospital or a diagnostic center to get a scan. The scan is done there, but it is actually processed using our AI and then validated by one of our radiologists. And then that report, the interpretation of the image, is what 5C's main, I would say, actually our main product. Mm-hmm. And this report is then used by the patient and their doctor in order to then decide the next steps in treatment. So this is how we, in our own way, play an impact in trying to help people, get faster diagnosis and get better and make better decisions on their health.
Good. So if I could explain, it's more of assisting the doctors in analyzing, like reading the reports that come out. So then
yes.
Yeah. So then the obvious next question is, I mean, everyone has that thought. If you're letting AI read the reports, how accurate would it be? Isn't it possible that it can make a mistake? So how do you kind of tackle that situation?
I mean, very valid and very important question for, I think, everybody to know. It starts with the fact that medicine, and this is actually surprising for people outside medicine, but medicine is an imperfect science. There is art, it is art and it is science. And it is also a fact that even doctors make mistakes, right? You just assume that, when you get a report, it's correct, but it's actually not. This is a very difficult practice. And on top of that, there is so much time pressure on these specialists that they are actually forced into making even more mistakes. And so when we think about AI in terms of medicine, I think fundamentally, like you questioned, it has to be extremely accurate when it says something. And that's actually one of the fundamental principles of 5C. When we saw people trying to build AI in this space, they're building on small data sets, data sets that are not completely inclusive, data sets that are not comprehensive. And that fundamentally leads to more mistakes, right? And nobody was building with large scale real world evidence. And I think one of the good decisions that we took while building 5C was that we will build AI with massive amounts of real world evidence. So over the past 7 years, we have read over 20 million scans. That's 2 crore people we have read for. And using all that data, we have now been able to build high quality, high precision, high recall models that allow specialists to be very confident when the AI says something. And so in terms of accuracy, I'll try to get to specific numbers. And I'll give you examples to make it easier. For an X-ray, if we call an X-ray as normal, the chance of it being normal is very, very high. So in technical terms, this means that the negative predictive value of our product is very, very high. Mm-hmm. Now, when we call a pathology or we say that there is a disease, it depends on the criticality of this disease. For example, we are very accurate when we say that there is a consolidation or an effusion in the lungs in a chest X-ray. Mm-hmm. However, when we detect a nodule, we are okay with false positives because we know that the radiologist is going to validate this report right after the AI reads it. And so we want to make sure that we are not biasing the radiologist with a false negative. Mm-hmm. But because we know that there is a human in the loop, we are okay with some level of false positive. So all this is a little bit of like the engineering part of AI and the product part of AI, which is choosing the point at which the product works best for the specialist is a lot of product thinking actually. And so that's the way we think about our pipeline and our accuracy. It's very clinically decided.
Got it. So the element that you mentioned, the human in the loop part. So does that mean that all the reports that come out, which are read by AI or scanned by it, uh, does it need a person to overlook it to see that if it's accurate or not? Because if that step is also required, then wouldn't that be like a longer process? I mean, just help me. I mean, correct me if I'm
I
wrong
think
here.
no, excellent question, and I think it's important that we clarify for the viewers, right? You're right that usually when an AI needs to then be validated by somebody, it just adds irritation to the whole process. The
Correct.
way that it works in radiology, and I think the way we have designed it is a bit different. So to answer your first question, at the moment, legally, it is required for every radiology report to be signed off by a radiologist. So, according to the medical ethics guidelines of India, and this is generally applicable to the rest of the world as well, a radiology report has to be signed off by a radiologist.
Mhm.
The moral anchor of this comes from 2 points. One is that the patient deserves the best care possible, and therefore a specialist should be reading that. The second thing is actually from a liability perspective. Now, when a radiologist signs this report, they are essentially saying, I have seen this report and I am willing to stand by it if necessary. And so those two things are very important. And so legally, a radiologist will sign every report in India, in the world as well. There are some exceptions, but we can come to that later. However, coming to your question on does this just add time? It depends on how you're using AI. And there have been multiple failed approaches to AI in radiology. People who have been trying to use AI for, I would say, screening. I think that's a very unambitious use case because after you get somebody screened, let's say for some disease, you then need to put them through a confirmatory test, which will add more time, more cost, and then actually get them into treatment. So I think that's an unambitious use case. People use AI as a second reader in some cases, and that's what you mean. It just adds time and irritation to the process. In our case, AI is actually streamlined very deeply into the workflows with clear visibility on to my radiologists on what they're seeing. So to give you an example, um, radiologists are bucketed specifically into what we call clinical swim lanes or clinical work streams. So a radiologist will only be reading, let's say, a significant number of normal X-rays. So their job is to, when they see a case, they know that it is normal and AI has read it as normal. So they just need to confirm very quickly whether they believe it is normal or they believe it is abnormal. And so AI acts almost like an intelligent router, like an intelligent filter, giving them only the types of cases that they need to validate. This way, the productivity, because the person is now, they have their blinders on, they know exactly what they are looking for. They are actually significantly more productive than the radiologist who's context switching continuously. Usually, in the practice of radiology, you read a chest case, then you read an abdomen case, then you read a head case, then you read a leg case. Some of them are normal, some of them are extremely abnormal. You're just context switching so much, it is so tiring. In the US, like 44% of radiologists have reported clinical burnout. It is an insane statistic because of this context switching. And some of our radiologists, I'm proud to say, believe that the 5C way of reading radiology is the future, where we bucket them into swim lanes, and it is a clinical operational work stream. So you know what you're reading, and AI helps you get only those types of cases so that you are extremely productive. And at the end of the day, these radiologists are generally more mentally fresh than the burnt out one who's been context switching throughout. And so in that sense, it helps as a router. It manages expectations much better, and we are able to show that clinically we're able to be even more accurate than a radiologist without AI.
Got it. And can we also say that in the long run, then the whole costing of radiology, like for getting a test done, all those processes, would the cost of it come down? Say
I
no
think
to
that's
that.
a very interesting question. And I'll give you my honest perspective. It is that I think that some of these prices in India are still low primarily because of the fact that people pay out of pocket in India. So to give you context, a machine in the US and a machine in India cost the same amount. They cost the same amount. However, in the US, an MRI scan is, let's say, $1,000, and in India, it's $100. right? And we need to make it up with the scale of diagnosis, because India is, we still have a lot of disease burden, etc. And so these economics will at some point in time break. I do think, however, that I think while radiology may probably get a little more expensive over the long term, I think that the expectation of radiology will also increase significantly, which is that your turnaround times of radiology will not be in days. Your turnaround times expectations in radiology will be in minutes, will be in hours, if not minutes. I think that's one. The level of the accuracy expectation around radiology will also completely change. And for people actually running diagnostic centers, if they're able to position themselves well, some of them can actually reduce the cost, because the people, like, I'm actually proud to say that there are now diagnostic centers in remote areas of the country who are confident in buying a machine because they know that 5C is their single click radiologist on tap. And so in that sense, right now, instead of somebody traveling from, let's say an interior area of Tirunelveli, where I'm from, all the way to, let's say, the main district, or even in some cases, Chennai or Madurai to get diagnosis, they will be able to get it where they are. And in that sense, it'll get significantly cheaper. So if you kind of look at the triumvirate of healthcare, cost, quality, access, I think that, AI will actually help all three. And that's why it's such a unique and a powerful technology. It will increase quality, increase access, and at the same time, at an overall level, reduce cost. And I think that is very, very exciting. As being a part of the space, I think that's very exciting.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, from your client's end, customer end, how are these hospitals or clinics that you partner with in accepting, of course, this whole AI system? I mean, do you have to go through a lot of convincing, or are the doctors, the hospitals now more aware of this, and they are in fact being more open to, trying out these systems and applications?
I think that there is actually a dual push here. On one side, people, I mean, the AI is a wave now. I mean, you
Yeah.
can't go even 30 minutes in a day without hearing the word AI today. It is a wave. And so, of course, hospital administrators, radiology department heads, operational managers, they all heard the word and they all want to leverage it in some form in order to improve.
Correct.
But at the same time, and I think this is a good thing, that most heads of radiology are skeptical till they are not. And I actually think that's a very healthy way of doing it. So I work with 5C works with 5 of the top 10 hospitals in India today.
Okay.
And in each of those cases, the radiology head has sat down with us and said, "Hey, man, I've heard about you guys. I like what you've shown me. The management likes you, but I am not going to move if you are not delivering clinical value." And the interesting thing is, each of them have done their own testing. So they say, you know what? I don't care what benchmarks you show me. So when we go, when my we don't even call them sales, we call them evangelization team. When my evangelization team goes there, of course, a part of the whole process will be that, hey, we are clinically and we are academically grounded. This is the precision, this is the recall, this is the AUC ROC curve. Like, we will tell them what they can expect. And all of them say, you know what, I get this. Thank you so much. Here are 500 cases. I know the answers to them. You tell me what AI says. And if it makes sense for us, we'll move forward. Consider this a test. So each one of them validate themselves. And it's now like we are now ready for it. So when we walk into a new place, we're like, hey, this is what I said. Now discard all of it. I'm ready to prove myself to you. And I think that's a very interesting way to incentivize yourself. You're only as good as your last report. You're only
Absolutely.
as good as your last diagnosis. So, my incentives and their incentives now deeply aligned. And I think that's the best way to grow the ecosystem.
Got it. And just a bit on the models that you use. I mean, let's not go too much in depth of it, but if I'm right, so this is more of your in-house proprietary models that you built, right? And but the data collection for it, like you said, 20 million scans you've used the data from. So this data is collected. This is an Indian subcontinent data, or is it from the global data available? So if you can just talk a bit about that as well.
Of course. So there are the way AI is going, right, there are three things that you need to understand broadly, geopolitically, even about AI.
Sure.
There is compute.
Mm-hmm.
There is compute, and the US is all about compute. There is architecture, and China is all about architecture. And then there is data. And my view is that India's big benefit against those two people is data and our capability to deploy. India is a treasure trove of various kinds of data. So to give you context, we have data from the latest MRI machine. We have data from an MRI machine that was sold 25 years back and still functioning. And so spectrum of data is very important for generalizability of a model, right? So in that perspective, we have collected data. It is primarily from India. The good news is that it is across machines, it is across modalities, it is across diseases, it is across demographics. And so generally the data is generalizable. And when we are now in the process of doing testing with US, but in the process of doing testing in Europe, we see that these models actually generalize really well. And one of my theses is therefore that, I mean, Indian data is so valuable because it is so broad and it is so generalizable. And I think that is one very exciting part. Coming to the models, when you think about building a model, a huge part of it is what data you have and what you can use with it. And in our case, we are lucky because we actually have this literally fire hose of data coming at us every day. The challenge for 5C has been how do we annotate, how do we keep this data well organized so that we can now train it. So 5C has probably India's largest medical image annotation team. We have actually created a course on this. We hired from this. It's very full stack. And so if you come to our office in Bangalore, we'll have 2 floors, close to 100 people just annotating every day.
Amazing.
And we have different types of annotations. We do bounding box annotation. We do, polygon annotation. We also do what is today called chain of thought or tautological annotation, which is so important for multimodal AI. So the way this works is that you want to explain to an AI how you came to a conclusion so that it can understand your chain of thought. So I'll give you a simple example. So one of my annotators, they are annotating an appendicitis case. So they're looking at a CT scan and they're actually saying out loud, and it's all recorded and then transcribed. They're saying out loud, the patient has right lower abdominal pain, which means that there's a chance of appendicitis. I am now scrolling to the appendix. The appendix measures X by Y by Z. X by Y by Z is bigger than A by B by C, which is the normal size of an appendix for this category of person. Considering that the appendix is inflamed, considering that this looks like appendicitis, it is tautological, right? It is if this, then this. There is no other way to go, and that is very useful. This is called chain of thought, and this chain of thought is very useful in training AI. And so we're building this insane capability, not only on vision, but also on actually building chain of thought annotation, which is very useful and gives us a big edge when we are developing models, which is why our models generally are very generic. All our doctors say that, the scale of AI that we see from 5C is like way higher than what we see generally. And that's because of our annotation capability, which allows us to then build models much faster.
Okay, that's very interesting. Just a couple of questions more, Kalyan. A highlight on the current big tech companies kind of suddenly rushing to release health related applications. I mean, I think just in the last 2 weeks, or I would say 1 week, we saw OpenAI release, Anthropic released, and I think last night MedGemma, Google's, I think the new model.
MedGemma 1.5 came out and with a focus on radiology, incidentally.
Exactly.
And, we have actually been working with the team there, so this is very exciting.
Oh, okay. So, what do you think has caused the shift, or why are big tech companies kind of pursuing the health tech sector?
I think that it starts from product thinking. ChatGPT OpenAI has told us many times that a non-trivial percentage of their search, 25-30% of search, is health, and people talking about health advice, asking for health advice. So it obviously made sense to build a subset of the product that is focused towards that. So from OpenAI's perspective, I can tell you that it is product. It is like consumer-based product thinking. Anthropic, however, is always enterprise focused. And they are thinking, hey, you know what, consumers are going to sync their, this data. Anthropic is thinking, hey, you know what, can I be the on top of a knowledge bank for enterprise?
Okay.
Right? And so that's what Anthropic is doing, because they're also seeing that more enterprises are trying to pass healthcare information to get outcomes. And so it's very obvious why they did that.
Yeah.
Google is developer focused. So if you look at MedGemma 1.5, MedGemma 1.5 is not a model that a healthcare system can use. MedGemma 1.5 is only a model that developers can use.
Okay.
And they are, of course, seeing guys like 5C, etc., giving them a ton of tokens and building a lot on the healthcare side. And so each of them have totally different reasons, which is very evident to me. OpenAI consumer, Anthropic enterprise, Google devs. Okay. But 30%, I mean, if you look at like US healthcare as a percentage of GDP is an insane 18 to 20%, right? I mean, there are so many dollars flowing through a system that everybody hates. And there is an opportunity for change. And of course, these trillion-dollar companies are seeing it. And it's interesting to see each of them trying it differently. But at the core is you started our conversation with health is personally very interesting for me because I am impacted deeply by it. And that very clearly resonates with all of them as well. And they see massive dollars going through it. And they want to own a chunk of the pie, clearly.
Makes sense. And Kalyan, what is your vision for this year, 2026?
26 is already, I would say, transforming so quickly. There's so much stuff happening. Like it is a tsunami hitting us on a daily basis, like new releases, new models, our own internal releases, etc. 26 for us is already planned as a year of significant growth. We already read something like 1.5 to 2% of all the scans in India. And we see this growing up to over 5%. So we will be a significant, we will be a hospital hold name, if not a household name, right? And we will continue to expand there. But there's also a lot of opportunities that we are seeing for international expansion.
Okay.
There's a big thesis that, my board and I have already built out that so many people are validating, which is that India has always been an IT exporting nation. India will soon become an AI and AI services exporting nation, right? And India could be a massive AI GCC for the world. And is there an opportunity to build high quality products around that from India, for India and for the world? I think yes. And so this year will be, for us, will be three things. It will be one, expanding and consolidating in India, because India is Agni Paraksh. If you can serve the Indian SME, you can serve anybody. We'll have to, of course, understand much more deeply those markets. There are many exciting opportunities, and I hope that you will soon hear from us as well on them as well. But there is a significant push internationally, and we're excited about that. And finally, at a very personal level, I think that this will also be a year to consolidate talent density in 5C. And we're seeing the age of there used to be this thing called 10x engineers. We're now seeing the age of 50x generalists. And I'm looking for 50x generalists in 5C. And I think that they will be fundamental to our ability to become an admirable company and a fast growing and continue to be a fast growing. So these are the three broad things in my head.
Amazing. It sounds very exciting, Kalyan, and I for sure would be looking forward to it because, like I said, this sector is something which really interests me. But anyway, best wishes. I'm just looking forward to all the lovely things that you and your company are going to do. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Vandana.
Thank you so much for this conversation, Kalyan.